to share business ideas, practices, and strategies while we enjoy our cup of coffee. I'm excited today. Jim Robinson is our guest. He's coming to us from San Diego, California. And I've had a great opportunity to sit in a virtual room with Jim multiple times through an Entree Leadership Program, through the Ramsey organization. And man, it's been a refresher for me to be able to sit around and hear some of the advice that he's given for over 30 years in business and things and lessons that he's learned through leadership and practical advice. Before we jump into the episode today, I want to encourage you or even challenge you or ask you, however you want to look at it, to share this episode. There's somebody you know that is leading a business, that is in management, that is trying to grow or scale either themselves or a business. And I would ask you to share this episode with them. Send it out on Facebook, on LinkedIn, send the link on YouTube. Just text it to them. And we also would ask you to subscribe on our audio podcast. You can find out more by visiting locdoc.net/podcast. All the episodes are there. We've got over 120 episodes of interesting information just like this. And we have a brand new episode coming out every Tuesday morning at 9 a.m. And the faster you subscribe, the faster you get access and alerts for all of those coming out. Thank you for those of you who listen regularly. We appreciate it. I have learned so much through this process of continuing to have conversations with folks like Jim that you're about to hear. And I'm excited to be able to share that with you on a weekly basis. So without further ado, let's jump into the conversation with Jim Robinson. You're going to learn a lot today, so be ready to take some notes, grab a cup of coffee and a pen. Get ready for this conversation.
We got so much to say. We got a podcast to make. We're sipping on lattes, and it's time for a coffee break. It's time for a coffee break. Oh, yeah.
All right, Jim, thanks for joining us today. Super excited. I've been looking forward to this for a long time, and we'll talk a little bit more about how we know each other momentarily. But before we get into that, we got to get into rapid fire. 5 randomly selected questions just to get under your skin with unknown point values. Are you ready to roll?
Let's do this.
All right. Number 1, what is your most recent book that you read, and what did you learn from it?
Who's Not How's. And it's adding people to your lineup, basically. You've got to delegate things. You've got to have the right people. You've got to not be bombarded or loaded down with what would be seemingly remedial tasks to yourself. It's really find your giftedness, stay in that lane, accelerate in that lane, and delegate everything else. As simple as your dry cleaning. Don't take your own dry cleaning, have it picked up. Really some of those simple tasks, but it takes so much of our time. Let it go. Get the who's involved, not how.
I like it. All right, number 2, if you could pick up a new skill in an instant, what would it be?
Patience. I don't have much patience. As I'm getting older, it's so important to get things now. And our phones, of course, those little pocket computers, has really created a high demand. Everybody has the same problem. I'm not unique to that. But we can buy a car, we can get a lunch, we can go fly an airplane, we can do anything from that little computer in our pocket. Mm-hmm. So because of that, it has taught us that we've gradually learned impatience. Mm-hmm. So a skill set would be go back and get some patience on this journey.
But that would just totally change who you are, though, as an individual. So that would be a horrible skill for you to pick up.
Well, we could debate that with my wife for a long time, actually. But I absolutely understand. My personality characteristics, before the pocket computer, by the way, I've been in business for 36 years. And we certainly didn't have pocket computers back then. And I can tell you I was driven the same way. I didn't have a lot of patience from birth on.
There you go. All right. Number 3, what is one thing that you are unbeatable at?
Unbeatable. Unbeatable. Everything can be beat. Man made, man broke. Unbeatable. I guess my tenacity, my drive in my space, specifically facility services business, inspiring those changes that wouldn't normally be there. Status quo is normal in our industry. We don't have status quo in this office, not any of my offices in the entire Western region. We don't believe in that. It's kind of toxic. If you start in the mundane, there's a chance you're going to have some problems.
I like it. I like it. All right. Question number 4, mentorship. Do you have any mentors or people that you look up to?
Yeah, so there's some people in my life over the years that I've been around very frequently. I have a guy here in La Jolla that I look up to. He's very driven. He's now about 80 years old. He actually started my business that I ultimately bought him out of. We were founded in the property management business, and I found a way to create a niche market within his brokerage firm. And that niche market is specifically facility services. And doing that he's taught me a lot of things. I'm still very much connected to him, but I've known him for 30 some odd years. And I would definitely say he's definitely a strong mentor. Prior to that, I was in the restaurant business. I was an assistant manager, and a guy that I worked with, he really taught me some integrity skill sets. I was a homeless kid at 16 years old. I was living on my own. I ended up living in a park. I wasn't as a result of drugs or alcohol. It was a result of ego. And so I was stuck in that park. But those things that we say, things happen for us, not to us. It's to grow us, change us, make us better and who we're supposed to be. So Denny happened to be, that's his name, Denny, happened to be in my life at that time and really had a real big impact. At 16, we're all very impressionable, and he made a big impact on my life. So I'd say 2 big mentors for me would be Denny and then John in La Jolla, and then my parents. Big impact in my life.
Very cool. Last question kind of plays directly into that. What fact about your current life would most impress your 5-year-old self?
Probably that I'm totally aligned with what my visions were as a little kid. And I had an opportunity to talk with somebody recently, and I said at 12 years old, my dream and my vision was so powerful that I didn't understand it. But it was crystal clear that it was the CEO driving companies and people. It would be in trades, and I knew that vision was so clear. Mm-hmm. But as a kid, I would draw pictures of aircraft and large trucks showing me getting to events or things. Mm-hmm. I didn't know at that time what that all meant, but it has been in my life my whole time.
Yeah.
So at 5 years old, if I were to look back now, I'm like, wow, you did exactly what I told you to do, mm-hmm. starting at about 5 and beyond.
That's awesome. All right. Congratulations. You passed rapid fire. We're going to give you a score of 998.
Nice. Let's go get the other 2.
All right. So jumping in kind of to the conversation, I want to get a little introduction from you as to just to kind of what the business is that you operate. But before we jump into that, a little bit of introduction. So you and I are both part of a Entree Leadership group, or I think it's called All Access through their Dave Ramsey group. Ramsey Solutions, whatever the name of it is this week. That's a horrible promotion, right? But I had shifted because of the time that I was available. I had to shift to a different group, and I jumped in one day, and you were on there, and I was like, okay, I've started a whole list now of Jim Robinson quotes because it's just amazing, and just like one of the ones you just said earlier was, things happen to us, happen for us, not to us. I've got that written down. There's a lot of those things that have come up, and we've joked about it a lot that we're just ready to sit at go. If Jim started a church, we would all attend. But very practical knowledge and just from I would imagine through experience and the things that you've learned. And so I'm excited to be able to kind of sit and have a little more in-depth conversation about some of those things. But I really appreciate, I guess, before we even get started, I want to say that I appreciate kind of the transparency that you have in those conversations and how you're willing to pour into and help other business leaders that are trying to grow as well. So I'm really excited that you've taken time to be here today.
Awesome. Thanks for having me. Great to be here.
So tell us a little bit about who Jim Robinson is and the company, the organization that you're operating, because I feel like I know a little bit about it, but I'd want to hear it from your perspective. What is it that you're doing on a daily basis?
So I'm now the president and CEO of this company, the founder of it, and is in August 19th, 1985 is my official start date. And I was working for a management company, and I was going out and I was going to anchor tenants. So at that time, it would be like Alpha, Beta, Big Bear, grocery stores, and things like that. And I would go in because I was in the trades already at that point, and I'd go in and I'd offer a service. I would do some kind of a repair. And because I had different trade skill sets, I wanted to offer all of those skill sets under one phone number. It's really the glorified handyman, if you will, from years past. Joe Handyman, Mary Handyman, whatever that looked like. Everybody has done this in the housing business for many, many years, as long as we could ever remember. Never did I ever find it in the commercial space.
Mm-hmm.
And at the time when I started to make sales in this business, I know it didn't exist because of the complications of trying to sell it.
Mm-hmm.
It would be, you do what? And I'm like, well, hold on a minute. So then I'd back pace and I'd say, okay, well, I'm a plumber. And then once they hired me and I earned their trust, I showed them what we actually would offer. And then I started hiring people. My very first employee, by the way, is just retiring this year.
Yeah.
And I hired him back in 1985. I'm still connected to him. He now lives in Sacramento. He doesn't work for us and hasn't for a few years, but I'm still connected to that guy. And he still remembers how we really, truly started this business. It really didn't exist. And the part of that is that we didn't believe in competition. We never thought we had a competitor.
Mm.
And that was really what drove those success days. Was we didn't feel threatened. We never felt threatened. We thought we were becoming the threat to others that may want to encroach on our business space. So it was a unique, very unique opportunity. Of course, there was ups and downs that were radical back then. And so much, though, we just thought we had this in the bag. And, of course, you never do until you actually get the results. And we just were not driving good results. We were driven by what we thought we could accomplish. And that kept us going. It took 3 or 4 years before we got going.
Yeah.
So the model is facility services. We work for 4 verticals. National retail chains, restaurants, hoteliers, and then property management. So large firm property management groups. That's our 4 verticals.
And so you started this kind of as just going around and trying to stir up business. Where does the organization sit right now from a size perspective?
We're about a $20 million a year company. We have about 120 vans on the road. We are in 6 states. We are in the entire Western region, basically, with our target is a global reach. We believe we can be in Mexico and Canada within the next 10 years. We're very focused on that, very driven by that. We're one of the few that plays at our level that is a self-performing company. Mm-hmm. There's several companies that are, we call them third-party dispatch groups or third-party management groups. We work for them as well, but they're non-self-performing. So we're one of those that, one, we have better control of the tax, the service industry side. So it's a self-performing, self-licensed business.
I know a lot of folks that will be listening to this podcast will be very familiar with national service providers and the call centers that you're referring to. And to have a group of that size that is self-performing is abnormal, right? That's which is incredible. We understand the frustrations HOA board members and property managers face when deciding the best solution for their HOA and pool security. Should we use a keypad, hand out keys, or install a key card system? Do we even need cameras? These are some of the questions that are difficult to navigate, and we're here to help. At Loc-Doc Security, we've spent over 20 years working with homeowners associations and property managers to find the system that best fits the pool and HOA needs. Camera systems for the front gate or front entrance, key card systems for the pool gates, or simply updating the gate so that it meets safety and code compliance. We like to take the guesswork out of the process to answer any questions and help find the right solution. Our mission is to help you protect your people and your property, and that includes pools. Contact our team today to schedule your free consultation for your community. Now, and I know I can hear it in the back of my head. A lot of people are going to be saying, Chad, ask this question. So you have 120 vans on the road. What's your total team size? How many people does it take to operate 120 vans?
Well, at some point there's 10 or 15 vans that are empty at any given point. Techs come and go. They find a niche for themselves, and so there's turnover in our space. It's a unique model because we're repairing 40 or 50 things versus just mechanical or just electrical or just plumbing. We're doing very diverse things, so it's kind of unique. So to operate 120 vans, there's about 150 people probably involved. There's coordinators. We have 2 main offices. That's in Phoenix and San Diego. All the dispatch is in those spots. And PMs are regionally. So there's project managers within region of wherever that location is, Seattle or Tacoma, wherever. And those guys meet with clients on a regular basis, but their coordinators are our central hub because it builds team. They need to be able to bounce ideas off of each other. That's very critical. They also need to be able to hear. And then regionally, they're a little bit unique. So there's some opportunity there to, one, systematize pretty much everything we do.
So, I'm not trying to dig way too deep into this, but it is an interesting ratio that we work on in our service world as well, understanding the number of folks, vans on the road versus number of folks that help to support that. So if I'm hearing what you're saying, if you have active 100 vans, you've got effectively about 50 support folks to help make that. So you're 2 technicians for every 1 support person. Is that kind of
that's pretty close.
Okay.
Yeah, that's pretty close.
Okay.
And the turnover in the office space, by the way, is not nearly what it is in the field. But there's a connectivity issue, and that's what we are working diligently today to correct.
So I appreciate you giving us kind of an overview of what your business operations are, and I'm going to kind of pick your brain a little bit on some of that through the conversation as it relates to scaling. So when you first started out and you're saying, hey, here's something that we don't believe exists now, or if it is, it's obviously not done well, or can we do it at scale? So you start to get this going, right? And you've now developed this business model. As you were going through the first 5 vans, the first 10 vans, and this is, you're growing this business and you start to have to put sales in place and operations and all of those things in place. What are some of the things that you learned or that stuck out to you that were pivotal moments? Because I know I talk to a lot of businesses that are around the same size as us and kind of on one tier or the other that are trying to figure out what are those hiccups, what are those milestones that you're working towards or that you're working through, and even ceilings that you're going to hit that are going to prohibit you from going to that next level. So as you are navigating through that scaling process, what are some of the big things that stick out that says, I had to learn this to get to here?
Yeah, so I do a couple of talks on this very topic, actually, and I kind of draw it in large horseshoe-shaped, upside-down kind of plateaus, and from million to 2 million to 4 million, 5 million, and then I jump to 10 million because that really is an abyss. And then I go to 15 million, that's a bigger abyss. Because when you go down into those holes, it's mastery of delegation will probably be the number one thing you have to get. You have to master delegating, and that requires trust. If you read Steve Covey Jr.'s book, Speed of Trust, it's imperative that you always just inherently have trust. You're going to get burned. You're going to have some challenges along the journey. But unless you're trusting, you can't delegate effectively. And then we coach in our own teams, we delegate in 3 topics, basically absolute clarity, a check-in point, and a closeout. Really, those 3 topics give you mastery delegating. Until you get your delegating correct, you're not going to grow beyond yourself and a couple of people. If you look in the trades, if you look in the specific trades over historically, plumbers, electricians, they can successfully do this really well, but they manage 6 to 8 people. That's it.
Mm-hmm.
And they do a great job, and that's what they do, for many years, and all of a sudden it goes by the wayside because the owner's directly involved. They haven't mastered delegating. They've mastered the craft or the trade. So you have to master that to be able to manage more people. It means bringing in more people.
So master of delegation, and those are so big hiccup points. And I would imagine as you're continuing to scale, that level of delegation, it changes obviously because you're not delegating directly to frontline. You're delegating to kind of your office support staff, your management staff, and to the administrators.
Yeah, there's a delegation to VPs and directors or direct reports to me.
Mm-hmm.
Those folks are being delegated to. They're delegating to their supervisors. They're delegating to their field techs, and there's a trickle effect. In the scalability of that, not only do you have to master delegating, because master delegating, just passing it on to have somebody else grow, is great. That's really exciting.
Yeah.
But you can't scale unless you have systems and processes in place that are masterfully defined and easily interpreted by virtually everybody on the team. They have to be able to interpret what the process is. That took me years to figure that out because, one, I started it. I was the guy.
Mm-hmm.
And then I was doing the delegating, I was dispatching, I was bidding, I was going out running the job. And then all of a sudden I'm like, okay, I'm at that 10, 12 person. I'm stretched so thin, I was sleeping on Saturdays. And the rest of the days were opportunities to work day and night. And I'm like, okay, well, that's going to kill me. I'm going to end up divorced. And I've been married 36 years, by the way. But fortunately, she was very patient and tolerant. But learning that, being able to systemize and build process around what we do, that's the only way you're going to scale.
I've often said this, and I instead of just saying it, I need to figure out a way to structure it and execute on it. But I feel like there should be a support system in place. So there's a lot of peer groups, and there's a lot of business development coaches and all that stuff for people that are leading businesses, for those driven folks, for the people that are in those positions. And there's got to be a support group for the partners and spouses of those people, because the turmoil and the level that they go through to support somebody that is just, like you said, overdriven and working yourself day and night to do that is for somebody to understand how to support that individual is a whole nother situation as well.
Yes.
So master of delegation, figuring out systems and processes. And I feel like, and maybe you can correct me on this, but developing systems and processes seems like it is a never-ending cycle, because by the time you get it figured out, now those processes and systems may need to change. The level of focus on that, over-processing or over-systematizing things where it takes the personal touch out of it. How do you balance that as you're trying to effectively scale? Because, and I've heard you say a couple of things around this before, but so you want to scale, but you also want to have the personal touch. How do you weigh that out, or can you?
So process and systems definitely evolve. And as soon as you create a process, you will see how many true weaknesses you actually have. So you create one process, you will develop 6 new weaknesses. And it could be even greater than that in some cases. And early on, this is in I'd say the 90s, early 90s, they started figuring this out. And I'm like, it makes you want to stop creating a system or a process. It makes you want to go back to just, having your hands on it. Forget the autonomy. I'm going to go back to the control mechanisms. But it's true. And it's even today now at 36 years in business, we're still creating process. And as we do, it creates 6 new opportunities to correct, fix, modify, look at, assess, toss out, get rid of. And you really have to manage from that perspective. Because if you just continually add a bunch of new rules, it's like Johnny going to kindergarten. Here's some crayons, here's a coloring book, let's do this. It's very simplistic. We still need to keep that. Even as we get older, we tend to lose our playfulness, but we need to advance back to playfulness, get rid of all the rules. Let's go to work with some coloring books and crayons and simplify the systems. So process, simplify it, get rid of some of the rules. You're going to collapse people. They go home stressed out beyond belief if you continually pound on more rules. So process, simplify it. Have a check-in point and a closeout point, document it, and move on.
Creating those processes, though, they as daunting as it can seem at times, and the statement that you made about sometimes it becomes so frustrating that you just want to scrap it all and go back to the control factor. I've lived in that several times and probably falter into that tomorrow, but you see the success of it, right, when you have the ability to step back and look, because you've given the ability for people to make those decisions and operate with the level of clarity like you were talking about. And so I would say thank you for saying that, because it gives me a little bit of motivation to say, okay, well, at least I'm not the only person that feels that way at times, because but at the same point in time, processing it or creating that system gives your team the ability to operate with a higher level of clarity to make those decisions. One of the things that I've heard you talk about, just kind of being in the virtual rooms with you to this point, is you have a seemingly high regard for development of people on your team. That is something, and I have even approached several different situations, and you've given some interesting counsel and feedback on from understanding of developing people. How has that been through experience, or like where do you land on developing people and setting that level of priority?
So that's actually my life's mission, is to grow me so I can grow others. And it's literally, that's my purpose. That's why I walk this earth. That's why my creator put me here. It's very defined for me that I am to grow other people. And I can't do that unless I'm creating a brand new system within me, whether it's education driven, wisdom driven, experience driven. And I simplify that even for my team. I say, go to a resort that you've never been to, because it opens us. And as it opens us, we're able to get more knowledge, more wisdom from just being around folks that are in that same space and that same opportunity. So that is the simplest way to do that. But it is my purpose in life, is to grow others. And as they grow, they have to grow others. And I gave a talk on the meaning of success, right? We know it's from our imagination, that whole word success. And I said, success to me is really very simple, but one of them is hearing other people coach on what I've coached. And that's just the greatest piece for me. I go to sleep at night knowing I can hear other people coaching, believing, and experiencing things because I've taught or had an opportunity to teach somebody else. Much like I've been mentored, I received gifts through that process. I have a responsibility to let them go and give them and share them.
I started a new book here recently called Meetings Suck. And basically how you can get better. Have you read the book?
Yes, I have.
Okay, he references something about that in there of, a great a great compliment for a leader is if he's in a room in a meeting and somebody else pitches an idea that he had coached them with, and I was like, it sounded very similar.
I got it from Bible. I've read the Bible. I mean, it's a teaching in there. It's a verse in there. It says you got to give.
Yeah,
and it's really give of those gifts. So it's who I am. That's what I do.
How much of that do you contribute to the growth of your company? The dedication to investment in developing people.
I would tell you that is the only way you're going to grow a business. It's in my heart of hearts. It's the sole purpose of what I have. Mm-hmm. I've taken people have been with me, by the way. I've had tenured people that are 25 plus years with me. Mm-hmm. And it's because we've continually spent time, effort, and talent to grow them. And it's when I started an education program back in the early 90s, I said, I'll pay for the education. And I'm getting all these people growing and smarter. And then all of a sudden I'm starting to see divorces in the company. Mm. And I'm thinking, wow, I created that because I grew one of them, not both of them. And so what I did is I started to change that. I said, if I'm going to send you to class or school or an event or something, you got to go home and convince your spouse that they have to go with you.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to pay for both of you to grow, but you have to go convince them. If you can't convince them to grow, then you can't go either. And that was a major shift for me, because I was realizing that we were outpacing the families, because we know business, the office, the wherever you're at, is where we get all of our experience and growth from. It isn't at home.
Mm-hmm.
It's not at the dinner table. We hear what your day was, but we're not growing there. The couch is not a classroom.
Mm.
And so it's really important that what we're growing during our business opportunities is what we're bringing home, and that's how our families are growing. Wow. When I figured that out, I'm like, okay, we got to grow everybody. So it's really it's a two-person thing to be able to get the education, the experience, the event, the conference, whatever that is.
Can you copy this key? That's a question we get asked about 3,422 times a year. And how can you actually be sure that the person who asked that question is supposed to get a copy of that key? Well, we think you should always know who can copy your keys to your business and your home, because it could be your neighbor, an old employee, a contractor, or even worse, your mother-in-law. At Loc-Doc Security, we believe in protected key systems, so you always know who has a copy of your key. To find out more, visit locdoc.net or stop by our Charlotte location. Loc-Doc Security, helping you protect your people and your property. Over the course of the time that you've been working actively to grow a business and scale it, and I assume that that's continuing on based off of conversations that I've heard you talk about recently of expanding and opening up additional offices, that's still a path. When do you understand how you have, I guess, one, understood how the process is working, because to a point it starts to self-replicate? How have you identified that? And then we'll move into kind of understanding how to identify results and how to hold people accountable for results, or just kind of clarify where we're headed.
The replication of things is really those processes and systems that you defined, and oddly enough, it becomes a life of its own. And when I first started doing this, I was like, man, that seems nuts. Who could follow that?
Mm-hmm.
And then we would make it more simple, or we would test it, and we're like, oh yeah, that no problem, I'll go do that. And so we were overcomplicating. We were making things so complicated internally that we thought it was complicated externally, and it wasn't. So as we made those things simpler for us to comprehend, the people in the field would comprehend it very easily.
Mm-hmm.
And then it would have a snowball impact. They would start coming up with ideas. Then I got smarter, and I just said, geez, I'm going to bring these people in. They're the ones that actually matter on making these rules, because they're the ones that have to live with it. So I bring everybody in, and I tell them during an interview, the hiring process, it's not that we, want to hear you. We expect to hear from you. And so we'll sit and we scale down. So we'll have regional meetings, but we'll scale down and we'll meet with 10 of them. I'll go around the room specifically. What about? How about? What do you think we should change? And the newest people on the roster
mm-hmm.
gives you the best insight, hands down. Your newest people, because they don't have blinders on.
Yeah.
They're not limited in their beliefs, and they have no loyalty yet. They haven't developed it yet. It takes a year or so to get loyalty. And so they give you the biggest insight in a very short period of time. And if you're smart about this, you take it for what it is. I'm 55, and I need the 20-somethings to be able to contribute to that path, that youthfulness that the companies must remain in.
Yeah. So before I get to results, because you just hit on something that I am currently struggling with at our scale, and we only have 41 people in our organization. You've got 150. Company-wide communication, especially multiple branches. You got a lot of teams. How are you communicating to the whole, and then at what points? Effectively, the cascading information. How are you communicating that, and how do you stay connected or getting that kind of consistent message across the organization?
Well, we use what we call the 80-20. 80% of my time must be with engaging people.
Mm-hmm.
And so I have regular conversations, whatever that looks like for that individual. I try to communicate at their level of language, whatever that is. So do they like texting? Do they like phone calls? Do they like emails? Whatever that is, that's how we continually communicate. All managers have this responsibility of the 80-20. It's 80% of your time is engaging people, 20% of your time is doing those things that are maybe remedial or analytical or something against your giftedness. But 80% of your work week has to be engaging your people. 80%. It's a big number because you're thinking, well, these executives, how do they do that? How do they really split? And then only 20% is actual analytics. And that's the reality. It really is the reality. It's an 80-20.
I completely agree with that. And I can see in my day-to-day that's very applicable, transitioning that to additional management team. That's at a specific scale. I think that is, I could definitely see where that could be a challenge. So it is just, I guess, continuing to implement the delegation and systems and processes so that the work is still happening without the day-to-day hands-on type involvement.
But even the managers, I mean, new managers, for an example, you bring in a brand new manager, we say they go to a level 3. If you've ever read Dr. Claire Graves' Spiral Dynamics, a level 3 is a red, right? So you take a person that's very, family oriented, just kind of cruising along, and you say, we're going to make you a manager. You're doing amazing. We're going to make you a manager. Boom. They go straight to red. I'm telling you to do it. Go get it done. I'm the boss. Right? They're not thinking about 80% of connecting to people. They're thinking of 80% telling people, and it's a learning process. And you can shorten it, but you have to be involved with them to shorten that timeline. And because it's so painful for them that they want it to be shorter, they just need guidance to make it shorter. And so you got to be involved with those folks. But you can grow a manager to where they understand that 80-20, 6 months to a year max. And then they convert over. They're like, now I get it. And as they grow into that role, they're also mentoring their folks behind them.
Yeah, understood. All right, results. So this is a thing that you've been talking about, and I know you said that you've got a talk coming up about it. Just the word in of itself probably perks up a bunch of ears. Okay, yes, results. I want results. When you're talking about that, what do you mean?
Well, results are immeasurable. It means you've stuck a number to it in some fashion. A number meaning a date is a number, a dollar is a number, the value you're going to gain. It can be as simply as love and connection. You got to have a result. So if you're going to have a luncheon, a business luncheon, a meeting of some kind, there has to be a result for that. Otherwise, don't go. You're wasting your time because there's lack of clarity. The other side of that is the performance. There's 2 columns, by the way. One, the right column is your results column, and the left column is your performance column. On the right, you have outstanding, excellent, great, good, and terrible. And on the left side, you have the same categories: outstanding, excellent, great, good, and poor. And if you take and think about how you're performing at any time, you say, how are you performing? Oh, man, I'm great. This is good. I'm doing really great today. And you look at what you're getting in results, there's a trickle-down effect from that. We see ourselves in the future. And when we do, we tend to inflate what we're actually delivering. So we say our performance is amazing. And then our clients are telling us, yeah, you're pretty good. You're like, whoa, that's not the same. There's no different, there's no connection there. What's happening is too far apart. Your measurable is on the right side. You have to put the team together, have a very clear plan, what expectations, results you want to get by your effort. That level of effort that you're going to give on that right column dictates how creative you have to get, left column, to be able to deliver that. In society, we as buyers, we never leave good enough for potentially better, right? There's too much risk. We like survival skills, right? We're all born crapping ourselves, surviving. Somebody feeds us, we're okay. We continue life that way until we demand something higher of our deliverables. So that result that we're getting is good. We're never going to leave it. To give a great result, you have to be excellent all the time. And if you're truly outstanding, the very top category, outstanding, I recognize this as Olympian status. Michael Phelps, right? Everybody knows that name. He's performed as an outstanding level, broke all kinds of records, did all kinds of things, as many other Olympians has performed and done.
Mm-hmm.
That's a straight across. And he actually focused on results first. This is the clearest. Results oriented. He recruited people to drive that result. And as a result, his performance level went through the roof, and it matched those breaking records. We say you get the endorsements, you get put on a cereal box. I created our own cereal box that I use frequently. We call it We Teams.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of a play.
Yeah.
But I use the same colors. It looks pretty close, but it's We Teams. And when you get Olympian status, that boom, you're on our cereal box. That's high level. And at the bottom, if you have a poor performance day, that poor performance day actually is an angle down to the abyss. It's in the toilet. It's not a zero. You get nothing, literally nothing. People quit you. They abandon you. You feel attacked. You want to attack. You blame. You make excuses, and you live in denial. And so those results, you think you're performing here, but you're getting less. So if you draw your angles in a chart, you can see what you're actually getting in a result. So set your results first and then create your actions to drive the results. Most people do it the opposite.
Set results first and create the actions for your performance. All right.
There you go.
I'm just taking notes here.
Yeah, take the note.
So as you're working towards that, so coming back to setting the result is clarity, right? And I think that's a common thing that we've been hearing and we've been talking about is, and I think our Dave Ramsey says it quite clear: to be unclear is to be unkind. Why do we struggle with that so much from a leadership standpoint, getting things clear and clearly defining the results that we're after?
I think lack of clarity is because kind of what my comments were a bit earlier is we see ourselves in the future. We see ourselves and we're judging our ability based on the future, not in the current or the past. In school, they taught us to look at a report card and it was always about the past. It was always about the past. We're conditioned to judge others based on their past. Our clarity, the lack of the ability to share that clarity, comes from that. We're always in the past. And so if we're thinking of ourselves always in the future, like we judge ourselves, not each other, but we judge ourselves, we think everybody's already got it figured out because the process has already been defined. There's already a plan defined. We're thinking of ourselves 2 or 3 years. Everybody else surely is. And so we lack clarity. We do have to slow down. And the approach to the defining the results first starts to add that clarity. So what needs to be done for the result? Is it a connection opportunity? Is it a money opportunity? But it needs date. It needs clarity in the deliverable.
So another way I've heard that said before is, okay, this is what we want to do. What has to be true in order for this to be accomplished? Is that kind of the same thing that you're saying is establish where we want to go, and then now let's sit down and be very intentional about these things have to happen to be able to get us to that point?
It's really the same type of message. It's right box thinking. And it's literally, you got to nail all of the deliverables. What do we want our buyer, our wife, our kids, what do we want them to experience? What does that look like? What results do we want to have? And in that, now you know the performance level in which you have to play at to be able to deliver that.
I like it. Great information. All right. So thank you very much, Jim, for sharing this today. I've got some notes here, and I think this is one of the things that anybody in a leadership role, if you can embrace it, and I would even say master it, but if you're embracing it and constantly striving to improve on it, then you are going to be moving in an upward trajectory. And if you can't figure that out, I guess that's probably where you're starting to bounce up against that ceiling.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, John Maxwell says we're the lid, right?
Yeah.
He says we're the lid in everything. We also take that to departmental. And we say, if you're the director of Region 2, you're the lid for those folks this week. Mm-hmm. Where are you growing? How are you inspiring those people? Are you doing the 80-20? Are you engaging people 80% of the time? And then doing the skill set that they don't care about, those 20% of the time, those other things that you actually have to accomplish. The rest of the time, you have to engage these people. So get really clear in that. We are the lid. We have to continually get educated and educate others, share those gifts. That keeps expanding the lid.
Great insights as always, Jim. Thank you very much. If people want to find out more about you, what is the best way to do that?
Oh, you can probably go to my website. It's www.cgpconstruction.com. That's the fastest route. That's the company. I have a new book coming out in September. It's called Consistently Great Performance. That is another website, www.consistentlygreatperformance.com. That's really what I coach and speak on regularly. It's kind of my life's work. Mm-hmm. And I'll continue that journey and keep writing those books the best I can. It's a painful spot for me. It's not my strength. Talking is probably my strength, I guess, in coaching, teaching others. But I'll continue to do that, and I'll use those books to be able to teach from that.
Very cool. I can't wait to read it when it comes out. I appreciate you being here, taking time out of your schedule. Great investment of my time, and appreciate all of the wealth of knowledge that you're offering. Jim Robinson, you can find out more by visiting the website that he mentioned, and we'll have links to that in the description below. And the upcoming book in September. It's going to be good. So if you have any questions on that, make sure you check out the website and follow the link there. Again, thank you for listening today. If this is your first time, make sure you subscribe. All of the information is available at locdoc.net/podcast, and we'll see you next Tuesday on the Coffee Break Podcast. Have a great day.